What do I do that makes me feel valuable? Great, the big question. You know, I would actually say one of my top values in dealing with other people is how they work with other people. I'm really big on teamwork and people who are compassionate and, you know, patient and kind with others. So that's probably my biggest value. Even when I'm dealing with artists too. I love working with artists who don't have all the ego stuff going on, but are really into building something that's bigger than themselves, I guess.
When I perform at a party, chances are more likely that I'm going to be surrounded by wealthy people and successful people than the other way around, because they had enough money to hire an entertainer to come to a party. So yeah, I spend a fair amount of time chatting with people who either are fancy or think they're fancy. And yeah, there are a lot of times I'll end up in a circle of men where I'm clearly surrounded by alpha males. And in a normal situation, there'd be a lot of chest pounding, there'd be urinating on things. But in this particular situation, it does come back to my high school experience of being a juggler. Kind of took me out of the social stratus, because when chests are being puffed up to see who's bigger, and I reveal that I'm a yo-yo man, all the wind goes out of those puffed chests, and people are like, what? What do you mean? Like, their guard is taken down, and we just talk about something that they have never talked about before. And I think the sense of being flabbergasted that I could actually make a living as a yo-yo man or a juggler breaks down a lot of those barriers, so I can have a more normal conversation. If I hang out long enough, the walls come back up again.
I don't know, sometimes it's easy to not think that you may be valuable, or you may not be contributing as much as you think. But when I thought about the answer to your question, how I would answer, like I said, helping people, and I guess that made me realize that maybe I do have some value, and I am doing something for some people.
If you don't feel unique from anybody, that's kind of like, I'd feel bad for them, because they feel like they're exactly, maybe they feel like they're the same, and that's a good thing, but in my opinion, I really think that nobody's really the same, because everybody has something different about them, you know? But, yeah.
The other thing that gives me value that I didn't talk about other than being a parent is trying to live my life in a way that doesn't harm other things. That's one thing that I really strive toward, you know, in terms of, you know, treating other people well and not making any situation worse. So always trying to be a positive influence on whatever you're doing.
For me, I was radicalized by graduating into like the worst recession before this one years ago in the early 80s. And I had an expensive education. I went to the University of Chicago, which is like invented every horrible thing that's ever happened in the 20th century came from there. I didn't know that at the time, but so I did, you know, I had a good education. I did well there. I was a kid who grew up in the suburbs, did well in high school. I had always sort of had this expectation that if you worked hard and you did what you were supposed to do, that good things would happen for you. And I did all of that. I graduated in 3 years with honors. I was all set for what was going to happen next. And what happened next was I was like broke and unemployed and couldn't find work. And that feeling of powerlessness really stayed with me. It was something that I never thought would ever happen to me. I never thought that I would ever be the guy who had no prospects, who had no, I mean, literally, I didn't see what I was going to do.
So something a friend of mine said 4 or 5 years ago, he said he realized he was getting older and growing up because he didn't have to be right anymore. There isn't any, it's okay if he's wrong. He doesn't feel like fighting to the end to make sure his point of view is the one that comes out on top. And I think that has a lot to do with it. Growing up and realizing what matters maybe isn't exactly the subject matter, but the process, the approach,
Like I said, I think my parents warped us in thinking that, Aristotle has a saying that a man who is only interested in himself is very small, and a man who's interested in himself and his family, he's big, but a man who's interested in himself, his family, and his community is very large. And so, that's kind of how I try to live my life, is to understand that as a community, sometimes we aren't really worried about what's happening outside of our four doors, until it hits our backyard, then it becomes our problem. But why not address that problem before it even, has a chance to hit your backyard? Why not address it when it's in your neighbor's backyard? So, yeah.
I think about like my own adjustment to the city and what it was like, and my adjustment to being a parent, what it's like, and my adjustment to, my life as it is now. And it was really just like this sort of moment of thinking about, like, I look in the mirror in the morning and I see a man. I see who I am. I know who I am. And other people see me, people that don't know me, and they see a black man. They see somebody who is, dressed a certain way or carries himself in a certain way or seems to be doing a certain thing. And I know that sometimes has some value judgment with it. And so I think it's important to be able to relay that stuff to my kids and to support them as they go through that learning process. There will be times where it's very, very painful. But I came out on the other side of it, I think, okay. I think I'm generally okay.
I want you to know how important each and every relationship is to me in my profession. That all my clients have value. They all, I hold a special place for them in my heart, and even the difficult ones. I'm honored, and I care about people. And I think that really, it helps the outcome of the process of their hair, because I really do care. I'm touched by people. And without people, my clients have been my great teachers about many things, about the world, about relationships, about trust. And they have been my gurus. They're important people to me. So I just wanted to express, because in my day-to-day work, I don't really express that. And I don't know if people know that or not, but I care about them, I worry about them. They're not just clients. They're important people. So that's all.
Originally, when I framed the question, I think the first time you asked me about this was quite a while ago, probably on the order of months. I don't know exactly how long it was, but that's exactly how I framed it. Personal, kind of like a personal thing, like what kind of my current track, and now I'm considering maybe a PhD, an MBA, kind of how do I position myself to further put myself in a position where I can dictate that kind of market, dictate the technology and how it gets placed. So that would provide value to me, is if somehow I get into a position where I can start making decisions on what technology we choose going forward as a country, kind of that level of thinking. And I think I can do that. That's a goal of mine. But then recently, so I'm about 27 years old, and never really thought about kids or family or anything. And so recently, I've been thinking more about that. And part of me just wants to stop, like, trying. not trying, that sounds terrible, but stop striving so much for like a PhD or MBA or all these things. I've done all this stuff constantly. It's been constant, and always thinking about the next step and maybe something simpler. Get off that, I guess, ladder of, like I said before, like making the decisions for the country. That's such a high and lofty goal. It's a lot of pressure, and what would be nice is just to have a family and settle down somewhere simple and raise children that have good values, and maybe they can start tackling these types of problems. So that's kind of two different things that I've been thinking about in terms of what gives me value. And they're not necessarily, you know, I kind of see it right now as two different paths, just because I've just been starting to think about this family thing. It's not necessarily that case I could have a family and also pursue, you know, the higher things. But so that's kind of how I frame the question.
The very second that I was eligible to start working, I went out and got a job, went out and got a part-time job. So I worked, you know, while I was a junior and senior in high school. You know, I've never developed a feeling that money in and of itself was something that defined you, because I've always been skeptical of marketing messages and these commercials which make it seem like you got to have this car and these clothes and those sorts of things. I never totally bought into that. But what I do believe, though, is that you can do well for yourself, and you can do good for people at the same time. And those two things don't need to be mutually exclusive. And really the most important thing to me is that, you know, when you have your finances in the right place, it just gives you a level of freedom that I think allows you to enjoy life more. That means you can direct your time in the way that you want to spend it, and you can direct your resources into the things that make you feel most important.
You know, like this ring that, you know, my dad wanted me to have, there's some monetary worth to it, I don't know what, but, you know, sentimentally, it's huge. And, you know, I'll never get rid of it. But in the same way, you know, my dad taught me how to drive, and that's gotten me through a huge part of my life. But I don't have anything that I carry around showing that. It's just that, you know, I mean, here's this. It's this inanimate object that I really like. But then, you know, I owe this huge debt of learning how to get to point A to point B with a vehicle that has an internal combustion engine, you know, to my dad. And that got me jobs. So, you know, that's it. Like, I don't really reflect on that in terms of what's worth more, but, you know, I know that the skill and, you know, this object are with me every day. So, you know, once again, like, that's something I feel both of those are really important, but I also feel like primarily they're just important to me. So, you know, I guess it's kind of, you know, what you're into.